Alrighty, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the concluding webinar of the National Forum to Connect and Advance Library Makerspaces. I'm very happy to see you all here today, and I'm really looking forward to a thoughtful conversation about the future of library makerspaces over the next hour. The National Forum to Connect and Advance Library Makerspaces is an IMLS-funded national leadership grant initiative led by the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign and the University of Illinois Chicago. For this project, CU Community Fab Lab at the University of Illinois and the College of Education at the University of Chicago partnered with the Library Makers, the Nation of Makers Libraries Working Group, the National Maker Collective, and American Library Association's Maker Technology Interest Group. Here is our plan for the next hour. So we'll begin with a brief introductions, followed by an overview of the project and key findings from our 18-month journey. Then we'll move into a panel discussion with team members who lead maker groups from across the country, and we'll wrap up with an opening discussion, and we'd love to hear from you all. First, let me introduce our team. So I'm Dr. Kyungwon Ko, and I'm the project director of the National Library Makerspaces Forum. I'm an associate professor in the School of Information Sciences, and I also serve as the director of the Champaign-Urbana Community Fab Lab, a makerspace on campus at the University of Illinois. The project co-director is Dr. Rebecca Teasdale, Associate Professor, Educational Psychology, University of Illinois, Chicago. Emily Budd, Instruction and Engagement Coordinator, the Champaign-Urbana Community Fab Lab, serves as the project coordinator. Our team represents different maker groups, including ALA Maker Technology Interest Group, Library Makers, and the Nation of Makers Library Working Group, and the National Maker Collective. So the team members include Leanne Ney, Sarah Nagel, Dr. Lisa Rigella, and Kara Kaus. You will hear from them during our panel discussion later in the webinar. So briefly, from August 2024 through January 2026, the forum brought together library professionals, educators, and researchers from across the country to reflect on how library maker spaces have evolved and to imagine where we should go next. So together, we explored the strategies to strengthen the maker movement in libraries and ensure its long-term relevance and sustainability. The forum was designed around three core goals. First, we aim to strengthen coordination and collaboration across the many maker groups and leaders, so the effort could be better aligned. Second, we wanted to reflect on and synthesize the substantial knowledge and expertise that already exists in this field and find ways to put those collective experience to work. Finally, we set out to chart a clear future direction for library makerspaces by identifying the resources, opportunities, and supports needed to help them continue to develop and thrive. And each goal was supported by concrete activities and outcomes, including a series of working groups. We also hosted the Library Makerspace Research Showcase, where scholars and practitioners shared like emerging findings and best practices. We've created an open access archive of all the presentations and materials. So if you haven't done so yet, I hope you all check it out, our website, and benefit from this collective expertise. Finally, we conducted national listening sessions to gather input from stakeholders on the future of library makerspaces. We released a public feedback edition of our findings in November and incorporated those like valuable feedback into the final report. So the report is currently in the graphic design stage, which is very exciting, and it'll be released by early February. So please visit our website, and I encourage you to sign up for updates to be notified when the report becomes available. So in today's webinar, we are sharing a summary and the key findings from the report, which proposed the strategic directions for library maker spaces for the next 5 to 10 years. And it is our hope that library maker spaces may adapt and use these findings to articulate your mission and vision to administrators, community members, fellow librarians, and broader stakeholders, inform and strengthen the local strategic planning and decision making process, and also advocate for your work and priorities by presenting this like evidence-based framework to administrators and decision makers. So ultimately, we hope that this report support libraries across the country in substantiating your effort and shaping the future of makerspaces. Okay, so now I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Rebecca Teasdale, our co-project director, who will walk us through our findings, the strategic directions, which include the value, vision, priorities, and key resources identified through this forum.
Thank you very much, Kyungwon. We're really excited to share our findings today about these strategic directions. These reflect the grassroots perspectives of professionals that we spoke with in public, school, university libraries across the country. So as part of the forum, we gathered input through 3 listening sessions. In March 2025, we also had an opportunity for asynchronous feedback. And this process was open to anyone who wanted to collaboratively work together to envision and plan the future. As Kyungwon said, this involved sort of 4 interconnected aspects of this vision: our values, vision, priorities, and required resources. And so I will walk you through kind of our high level findings in each of those areas, starting with values. Among all of the participants and all of the feedback we got, there was a really strong consensus on 5 key values that really underpin makerspaces and making in libraries. The first of those values was access. So this is really ensuring that everyone can participate in making by lowering financial barriers, technical and social barriers. The next value is belonging, which is ensuring that everybody feels welcome, feels respected, and able to fully participate. We're going to bring their whole selves to the space. And that requires creating a judgment-free and welcoming environment for making. The value of community speaks to 2 different aspects of community. So first, there's the connections between the library and the community it serves, whether that is a city or a campus community or a school. And then also the connections that are formed when people come together to make. And then creativity is the imagining and exploring and expressing ideas and transforming those ideas into tangible forms, and really weaving together all of the diverse traditions and disciplines that come together in making in libraries. And then the last value in the set is learning. And here we're talking about lifelong, hands-on, learner-centered learning that really values discovery and growth rather than perfection, right? So as we think about these 5 core values, it's really striking that they reflect both the broader mission of libraries, but they also really define what makes makerspaces distinctly impactful within our libraries and within our communities. And we can also see that each of these values is really interconnected with the others. They don't stand alone. So we can really see a lot of those links, for example, between access and belonging, right? One kind of, access fuels belonging in the same way that creativity really fuels learning. The next piece of the strategic vision strategic direction that we identified is the vision for the future. And this unfolds at multiple levels. So we'll start by talking about the makerspaces themselves. The collective vision that folks shared with us was makerspaces that are vibrant, busy spaces that are used by a wide range of people with different ages, experiences, identities, and backgrounds. Spaces that are accessible and welcoming and supportive and respectful, and that are fully embedded and integrated seamlessly into their parent organizations. Again, whether that is a municipal government, whether that's a campus community, or whether that's a school. And these makerspaces are widely recognized and valued by the community. So this is sort of the strategic vision for the makerspaces themselves. We also gathered input from all of our participants about a vision for the individual people who engage in library makerspaces. And here there were three key areas that really stood out. The first was that makers expanding their knowledge and skills and literacies through their hands-on experiences in the space. And then as a result, also experiencing personal growth. So feeling more confident, experiencing joy, being willing to take those creative risks increasingly. And then as a result, individuals experiencing success in pursuits that matter to them. So those could be academic pursuits, creative pursuits, or entrepreneurial pursuits, for example. And then all of this kind of builds up to the community and the society level. So the vision extends beyond the spaces or the people that are there to encompass broader benefits for our communities and for society overall. That includes communities being more connected, more equitable with expanded access to making tools and opportunities and technologies. And then the makerspaces promoting greater sustainability. So things like repair and reuse and reducing waste. All of these sort of add up to those higher level benefits. Part of the strategic direction then is figuring out, okay, how are we going to get there, right? What are the priorities that we need to work on collectively? And so we found 5 key priorities for advancing library makerspaces over the next 5 to 10 years. And we elaborate on this quite a bit in the report, the final report that's coming soon that Kyung-Won mentioned, including lots of quotes and greater detail from people who participated. So I'll give you a high-level overview at this point. The first key priority is building sustainable infrastructure. So building a foundation for consistent operations, for fair policies, clear procedures, and scalable services. And this includes both tangible infrastructure and intangible. So some of the tangible stuff, right, is like equipment and furniture and scheduling tools and training materials. And then those intangibles are things like service models and policies and backing from administration. The next priority then is thinking about community engagement and partnerships. So ensuring that makerspace programs and services really align with local needs and priorities and aspirations. So this requires carefully and systematically listening to communities rather than assuming what folks' needs and interests are, and then planning our spaces collaboratively. So that could be using advisory boards or co-designing programs, for example. Also being responsible to the evolving nature of users' needs and interests, right? They aren't static, they're going to keep changing. And then building strategic partnerships that can extend the capacity and strengthen what library makerspaces are offering. So that could involve sharing resources with other organizations. It could involve what we're calling expertise partnerships, so things like guest instructors and making artists residents kinds of things, as well as alliances between and across institutions. Another key priority is staff development, really investing in the people that are at the heart of our spaces. And this is just absolutely critical to the long-term success of our makerspaces. So we think about this in multiple different ways. Looking for expanded training, expanded support across multiple different pathways so that folks across their career can find ways to continue to grow and build skills. And that might be through formal education, so things like courses and certificates and degrees, on-the-job learning, as we learn through mentoring and project-based training, for example, and then also continuing professional development. What am I on here? The fourth priority is clear communication and stronger advocacy, and that is both internally within libraries and externally. So, thinking internally, some of those strategies are really clarifying makerspace roles and services, sharing information across all levels of the institution, of the library, of the parent organization, and then building internal advocacy to overcome any resistance that might arise, whether that's administrative resistance or political resistance, for example. And then thinking more externally, their priorities here is to really raise public awareness about making in libraries, demonstrate its value, and advocate for policy work. Across these, a key priority here is also thinking a lot about our terminology and potentially reframing that to improve understanding and support. So people don't always know what we mean when we talk about makerspaces and making. And so how can we more clearly and can persuasively express the work we're doing? And then the final priority area is around adaptability and innovation. And here we're talking about more than just adopting new tools. So we know that many communities face challenges with foundational digital skills. And so having those accessible entry points is really essential. And then at the same time, we need to stay responsive to the rapidly changing technologies and trends. That is also critical. And so this is kind of requires this balance between ongoing professional learning to stay current and ongoing community engagement to stay really in touch with what our communities need and prioritize. So how are we going to do this? Well, the last piece of the strategic direction was about identifying the resources that are going to be required to accomplish these priorities and realize our vision. So again, this came from the grassroots. This came from library practitioners all over the country who identified 5 key resources. The first is sufficient and reliable funding. And that's needed to equip makerspaces, to operate them, to sustain them, and to evolve them over time. Another key resource here is having staff who really understand and embody the values and the vision of makerspaces and reflect the communities being served. And we know that many library staff are juggling multiple responsibilities. So often there's not a lot of time available for makerspace tasks or for staying current with equipment and resources. And so in addition to having staff, we also need to have dedicated, protected time for those staff for their makerspace work. An additional resource that's needed is a makerspace related training and professional development. And so this includes kind of field level training structures and professional pathways. We talked about that a little bit under priorities. Also, opportunities for organizations like state libraries to provide training and financial assistance, peer-to-peer learning across makerspaces, and then integrating maker-related sessions into ongoing staff development at libraries, such as library staff development days. The fourth key resource are structures for knowledge sharing and networking. And this is really critical to strengthen our infrastructure, to build that communication, and to foster the adaptability. So this includes platforms and opportunities to communicate across libraries, to collaborate, and to share resources. And then the final resource is organizational and community buy-in. So we're thinking here about the administrative support that we need, support from funders, from board members and other leaders, as well as buy-in from staff who are working in libraries and the community overall. So that is the strategic direction that we identified and learned from across the field in the listening sessions that we held. And I'm going to turn it back to Kyungwon at this point to talk through some of the recommendations that our work generated as well.
Thank you, Dr. Tisdale. So now I'll talk about our strategic recommendations. So these are based on a synthesis of insights gathered across all forum activities. The extensive input from practitioners, researchers, and partners allowed us to identify the key strengths, the challenges, and recommendations for the future. A lot of them are really reflecting what Dr. Tisdale just mentioned. Um, So the current reality. So when we look at the current landscape, we have many strengths. So makerspaces really embody the evolving role of libraries. So we take the library's core missions and bring it to life through hands-on creative and like participatory experiences. And in many ways, we make values like equity, inclusion, and the public good visible and tangible. And across the forum, it was really clear that the greatest asset in this field is its people. The librarians, maker professionals, and community makers are the heart of this field. So their passion, creativity, and commitment drove this, like, drive the movement forward. So we see several active maker groups like Library Makers, the National Maker Collective, and many regional groups, and they create important spaces for connection and shared problem solving. We also see strength in the research community. There is a real effort to bridge academic scholarship with day-to-day practice, and the research coming out of this area shows a range of creative and thoughtful approaches that helps the field stay reflective, innovative, and grounded in evidence. When we look across the field, however, we also see some important challenges that library makerspaces are navigating right now. So first, makerspaces are still not always understood as core library services. So many people, both inside and outside libraries, see them as like something extra or peripheral. We heard concerns about sustainability, like funding for equipment, staffing, and space can be unstable, and professional development isn't consistent across institutions, and organization hurdles like bureaucracy or shifting priorities can slow down the progress. Another challenge is the lack of national data. So without a clear picture of who is offering what and who is being served, it's really difficult to measure collective impact and make a strong case for long-term support. Equity and inclusion are also ongoing goals. So even with the strong commitments in place, we still see barriers such as underrepresentation of certain groups, limited accessibility for users with different abilities, and a narrow range of making activities that can unintentionally exclude people. So, what we often see is that while passion for library makerspace is high, the supporting infrastructure is often fragile. So, since the first public library makerspaces in the US was built in 2011 at the Fayetteville Public Library, so roughly 15 years, library makerspaces gained rapid and widespread attention. So, when it was first introduced, it was very much a trend. Today, however, the landscape has shifted. So maker spaces and programs are now embedded in libraries of all sizes across the country and are increasingly part of their services. And I would say we are moving from a period of novelty to one of necessity. And this movement calls on us to move beyond the initial hype and intentionally chart a path toward a long-term sustainability and really meaningful integration. So we have identified five recommendations. Again, many of them resonate what Dr. Teasdale presented about the values and visions and priority resources. So I'll give you like highlights of those recommendations. You can read more in our report. But like recommendation one, like strengthen the foundation. So building a sustainable foundation is essential for maker spaces to operate consistently, adapt over time, and expand their impact. So in practical terms, sustainability include a different component. including robust physical and digital infrastructure and clear operational system, and also diversified funding models. Recommendation two, grow the people. A sustainable future for library maker spaces depends on the people who lead, teach, and create within them. So strengthening the field means investing in professional learning and leadership development at every career stage. So right now we see a gap in formal education related to library maker spaces. So for example, continuing education within LIS or certificate program or coursework would help. Another way is the mentorship. Structured mentorship programs or peer learning networks can create stronger connections between students, new professionals, and experienced practitioners. Equitable access to professional development is another key need. Library workers in all types of communities, including rural and under-resourced areas, should have access to affordable and flexible opportunities to learn and grow. Recommendation three, sustaining momentum across library makerspace field requires strong networks and intentional collaboration so that the field can move from isolated innovation to collective progress. One important piece is shared digital infrastructure, like online platforms such as resource repositories, toolkits, and research collections, and virtual communities of practice. Those things help people connect, share, and collaborate. And of course, to be effective, those platforms need long-term maintenance and thoughtful governance so they remain useful and sustainable. Regular opportunities for dialogues like ongoing forums, conferences, working groups offer spaces for people to share insights, align their efforts, and build lasting relationships. And cross-sector partnerships between different areas, as well as educators, practitioners, and researchers and community partners can really enrich the makerspace field. Recommendation four, the elevate the message. So to sustain visibility, credibility, and support for library maker spaces, we need to elevate the message. When we clearly articulate who we are and why we matter, it becomes much easier to communicate our impact, inspire investment, and build long-term public trust. So it's essential that the field has a strong and shared identity. So having a shared understanding of what making and library maker spaces means really strengthening our communication and advocacy. So describing a maker space as a learning space, creative space, technology and innovation space, or community space can resonate with different groups depending on their values and priorities. Yeah, and the crafting and compelling and strategic narrative is key. So, evidence-based message help reach a wider range of audience along with the strong anecdotes here. So looking ahead, staying vibrant and relevant means that library maker spaces must continue to evolve alongside the broader societal, technological, environmental changes. So it's not just about adapting new tools, it's about engaging thoughtfully with the values, challenges, and opportunities that shape the future of learning, creativity, and community life. One piece of this is like creating space for explorations and experimentations. So we need time and resources to investigate emerging topics like artificial intelligence, environmental sustainability, and the connections between physical and digital making. At the same time, we also play a key role in bridging the digital divide. So remember that many communities are still struggling with basic technology literacy gaps. So among the rapid technological advance, we still do need to support foundational digital skills and basic technological literacy for community members who need it most. So together, we hope these five strategic directions forms a roadmap for sustaining and advancing library maker spaces as a vital component of 21st century librarianship. And we believe makerspaces have been playing a critical role in strengthening libraries' role as community-centered space for creativity, learning, and inclusion. So where people not only access information, but also imagine and build the future together. So thank you for listening to our findings and recommendations. We'll now move into the panel discussion with our team members who are leaders of different maker communities, who have been absolutely crucial to the success of this project. And our panelists, everyone is here. Let's say Leah Ney, Sarah Nazel, and Dr. Lisa Rigella. Karakos, feel free to jump in if you like. So I have three questions for the panelists, and we'll begin with the first. So first question. So of the strategic direction shared in this forum, which feel most urgent or most promising to you right now, and why? So if one of the panelists would like to start, please feel free to take the mic.
I can get us started. So I think the thing that stands out most to me from all the discussions that we were a part of is that staff development is a really crucial area of this work. So as Kyung-Won was mentioning, we know there's a gap in ILS programs where it's not necessarily being taught in graduate school. But we also just heard that a lot of people are learning on the job. So it may be that they've never worked in a makerspace before and they're kind of thrown in. And it's great to learn on the fly and figure things out, but also we can't expect everybody to do that. So I think it's important, especially if we want to bring in other voices into this work. I think we need to provide more resources to sort of lower the barriers to even getting into this profession. And that's what's so cool about groups like Nation of Makers, is to have these like free professional development opportunities that folks can attend, and they don't necessarily have to be part of an organization or go to grad school, but they can still connect with people in this field and kind of build their skills that way. But that's definitely one that stood out to me, and I know one that we've talked about a lot in this group.
Definitely. Thank you. Sarah?
Yeah, I would say I totally agree with Leanne about staff development. It's an ongoing, I guess, issue need that is constantly evolving as makerspaces evolve. I also think that advocacy is something that is just so important and a constant need. You know, makerspaces, again, I think some people thought what makerspaces were kind of a trend, and some people who don't quite understand makerspaces, it could be our administrators, it could be community members, you know, it could be some of our users who don't understand quite the depth and the impact that makerspaces have. They may need to kind of see the different side of makerspaces and realize that makerspaces are this, we're not going anywhere. We're this ever-growing, resilient, impactful library service. And even though we could sometimes be misunderstood or kind of overlooked, our users and our partners see this huge impact. And we have to have a national network like this to work together to be able to elucidate to all of our, stakeholders that impact and, find ways to share our data in a variety of different ways that will make sense to a whole bunch of different user groups and to our administrators as well. And so I think that that's one of the great things that came out of this project was identifying that need and just bringing all of these wonderful makerspace folks together so that we can kind of start developing this shared identity and definition of what makerspaces are, and so that we can kind of wrap all of that around, the values that underscore our services and strengthen those conversations that we have with, our administrations, with stakeholders, with communities, with patrons, and really widen our impact and make the case better for, why we exist. Our patrons, our champions see it. We see it every day. We understand, but we're just so much stronger together. And I think that's the power of this project. And I am so excited to see how much further we take it after this project concludes.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. Anyone else want to address the first questions? If not, we can move on to the second questions. And as we discussed, no one person or one organizations can address all those strategic plans. So we need all the networks and groups. I'm glad that all the panelists are here to share about your group a little bit. But my second question is, how has your group built on the forum's findings? And can you share an example of work that grew directly from them? Yeah, it would be a good chance to maybe introduce and talk about your group a little bit too.
I'm happy to chime in. Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Regala. So I'm on the leadership team for Library Makers, which is an online community of practice for library practitioners, library supporters. And it's a place for folks, whether you're just starting out in your space or you're very experienced, to share what you're doing, a problem you're having, a question you have, a tool you're not sure how to fix, right? And get some response from the community, or share it. We do monthly online webinars too. So folks in the community have a great project or something they've worked on they want to share as well in that format. And we have been working separately on a piece that we called our problems of practice. So our group kind of sat down and said, what are these common challenges that folks in library makerspaces are facing? And then, our next step is, what could we do about it? But we're just because we were trying to think about our online events and our community. What topics do we really want to address on this community? What's really important to the field that are these kind of universal? It doesn't matter if you're at a small rural library or a big city library, like we're all facing these same challenges. And so we developed this set of problems of practice by having some small focus groups and talking to folks at various conferences. And then we became part of this group, which was amazing. And the listening sessions and the research, and all of those findings started to come out. And I looked at all of the values and priorities and resources, and I looked at these problems of practice that we were creating and went, aha, right? Like there was this magical connection. And it was so wonderful to see that, number one, we were hearing the same things, right? We had been talking to people, some different people, right, than you all did in this project, but we were hearing these same things, and we kind of framed it in a little different way, but it really resonated. So we actually took this research and changed our problems and modified them a little bit based on this work. So very thankful to be part of this group and to have that kind of validation that we're all kind of facing these challenges together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Library Makers is such an asset and wonderful community for everyone, open free community resources. So if anyone hasn't checked out their website, I highly encourage you to visit Library Makers. Anyone else responding to the second question?
So Sarah and I joined this group from the Nation of Makers Library Working Group. Nation of Makers was a wonderful organization, but due to some things outside of their control, were unable to continue. So Sarah and I saw the value of what we have been doing with that group. So we have since spun off in the last 18 months, switching from kind of that arching overhead to creating the National Maker Collective. So you can check us out. We have a Discord that's very active. And our mission was kind of just to continue the dialogue amongst makerspaces at a national level, to continue to provide a space for makerspaces to connect, We saw a lot of value in being able to find other people. Many of us operate makerspaces or work in makerspaces that may not have another makerspace close to us geographically. So being able to find resources where we can ask the questions, how do you do this? How do you fix this problem? How do you do staff training? How do you fix a machine that's not working? Was just really valuable to the community as a whole. So we wanted to continue offering that kind of connection. So that's what we've been doing. And I think that part of what really stood out to me with the findings is that is valuable, that connection is important, but also uh, the coordination amongst the various groups. So all of us sitting here, I think have found a lot of value in each other and in being able to coordinate what we're doing, but also to have better responses to reach out to makerspaces and to help uh, answer their questions and to help them, whether it's advocating for their existence or if it's training staff or if it's just answering those questions that we all at some point have. That it's been great to be able to work together and to continue to connect on so many levels, and to really just help makerspaces across the nation to exist and to thrive.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kara. So the National Maker Collective is the newest national maker group. So again, check it out. Hopefully we can drop their Discord link to the chat. Yeah. Anyone else wanna talk about the second questions? Or we can move on to the last question, last but not least. So the third question is, how might libraries, large or small, where resources right now, put these findings into practice? What's just one realistic step a library could take this new year to support or grow its makerspace?
I'm happy to go and kind of continue the thread for a
Yeah.
minute that I was talking about before, and then curious to know what others think too. But that problems of practice project I mentioned is still going on with library makers, and we're shifting now to actually hearing from the community what are the strategies people have been using to address these. I mean, yes, they're all problems we face, but we're all every day, right? Taking one step to help try to solve it. And so we're in the process of collecting all of these strategies that everyone's been doing around the country and working on creating a series of PDFs and maybe some webinars and stuff in the future to disseminate those. So I just say if there's I know that many of you are out there doing amazing things, right? Already to help address these challenges that we're all facing. And so, yeah, if you want to, we're doing it. We're in the middle of a series of roundtable discussions right now. We can put librarymakers.org in the chat, or I'm happy to put my email too if folks want to reach out. But would love to have you part of those discussions, or even just participate in any way that you see. But it just, I think, again, is this way of we're all working together, right? It's been so helpful to be part of this group, like everyone said, to just collaborate and hear what everyone's doing. And I think if we can all put the things that we've already been doing together, it might spur new ideas of ways that we can keep tackling these challenges and move forward as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Um, Anyone else want to talk about the third questions from the panel?
Yeah, I was thinking about kind of continuing what you're saying about like the advocacy piece. And Kyungwon mentioned earlier, like makerspaces have kind of moved. It's sort of like we're moving into the next chapter. We're no longer the like trendy thing. We're the like established part of the library, but at the same time, like we've maybe lost, like we're not the new shiny thing on the block anymore. So we need to back up what we're doing and advocate for our spaces. So I was thinking of advice I would give myself is to just document the success of my makerspace, whether or not somebody's asking for it. So like there's so much going on and your boss, your administrators might not even be thinking about you, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't communicate your impact. And that can be just, a one-page document about a user story and how that connects to your vision and goals of your library or your strategic plan. So just something I'm like, I think you can take it small scale like that and just put that in front of, in front of your boss, put that information there. Always be making a case for why your makerspace matters. Because we all know, but making sure that everybody around us knows that as well.
Wonderful advice. Really important. Thank you, Leanne. Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah. So I am a true believer that people are always asking about what the next big thing, what the next big technology in makerspaces is. And I think especially folks who are new to makerspaces, who are starting a new space in a library, can get a lot of pressure from their administration, or maybe just themselves feel a lot of pressure to always be chasing that, always be chasing that next big thing. And I think if you look at the shared values and the vision that was put together through all of these listening sessions, and really the universal, message that we got from that you all got, really. You did the most of this work, but it was less about chasing the new technology and more about the people and these deep and impactful learning experiences. So I would say that the best thing that you can do is take a step back and a big deep breath from that pressure of always having to be on the cutting edge of technology. It's important to kind of like know what's going on, but think about being more patron driven, more welcoming, more collaborative and flexible, and make sure that your community feels like they have a space there. So try to connect to the most pertinent organizations in your community, and depending on what type of library you are, that might be your campus community. If you're a public library, that might be other organizations within your city or whatever. But whatever that means to you, make sure that you are connecting to whatever is meaningful to your patrons. And I think if you focus on the people more than the actual technology, then you will be successful. If you focus too much on the technology and not the people, then you're not going to resonate with your community. And you really see that if you read through the key findings of this report. So I'm excited for the final version to be available to everyone. It's such a valuable document. And I think that going forward, that's going to be, that is the next big thing in makerspaces, is just being more welcoming, more, patron driven, and more open and equitable. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's such a valuable comment. I appreciate it. So I thank you for the panelists who shared your insights. And at this point, I'm going to hand things back to Dr. Rebecca Teasdale for the open discussion and Q&A. We already received a question through the chat, so we can start with that. But I'll just let Dr. Teasdale to open the floor for everyone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Ko. We are excited to hear from all of you. So there's a couple different ways to chime in. There is the Q&A feature of the webinar where you're welcome to drop questions. The chat should also be open for everyone to comment. And so we encourage you there to send comments to the everyone feature so that all of the participants can hear that. So I'm going to throw out, I think first let's respond to Christopher's question Regarding the fragility of library makerspaces, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for improvement there? And what do you see as related, or I'm sorry, as the lowest hanging fruit? So I heard some of that already with the panelist responses, which was really helpful. Does anyone else want to chime in and share some opportunity, biggest opportunities, lowest hanging fruit?
I'll chime in a quick second. I saw that question. I was thinking also about um, just leaning into the types of skills that patrons develop through their work in a makerspace and how we can, when we're thinking about making the case and advocacy, that we're leaning into the fact that we are helping. Doesn't matter what technology you have. It doesn't mean if you're doing a hand sewing project or you've got a big, laser cutter, but you're still leaning into these skills like creativity and problem solving and collaboration, even that are useful no matter what, right? It doesn't matter what field you go into. It doesn't matter how many robots take over the world through AI, right? We are still going to need creative problem solvers in this world. And I think, really taking a deep dive into that and leaning into those, that mindset that we're developing that can be beneficial to anyone in any field in any part of their life.
I think another low-hanging fruit is looking at your community. Again, whoever your community is, identify that and then engage, because without community engagement, it doesn't matter if I have a single 3D printer or a full-scale maker lab. It doesn't matter if I have one staff member or 20. If the public, if my community is not coming in and using those services, then there's not a reason for me to be here. So I really think that identifying your community and find ways to bring them in and to engage with them is just a really important piece. And that can look so many different ways depending on what your makerspace, looks like and what you're doing and what your staff expertise is. But engaging with your community is huge because that's really how you build and grow and, verify that you are here for a reason.
That's so great. Thank you so much, Kara and Lisa. Um, I see another question has come in. Questions are coming in. This is awesome. I also have a couple prompts on the slide. So as we're handling the questions that have come in, I invite you to think about the takeaways from what we've shared today. Sort of what stood out to you from the findings, from the reflections of our panelists. What feels most relevant to your work? We would love to hear that. And we're also really curious about next steps, sort of how you might use these findings to support and advance the makerspace in your library and what you would want to see happening next. So invite you to put that in the chat, to put that in the Q&A. And Emily, I will lean on you if they're for tech in the chat. If there's any issues with people being able to message everyone, let me know. But some other questions are coming in, so we'll start with that. So the first question here is for those building up their collaborations with groups, whether that be scouts or businesses, etc. Does anyone have a form or questions they're using to help frame expectations for the group or projects being completed? Any phrasing that you lean on to help keep things focused on those core values and the intent for this type of engagement? That's a great question. Curious if Kara, it looks like you might have some thoughts about that. Awesome.
So, running a public library makerspace, we often work with scouts and businesses and other groups. We do have a form on our website to set up those group visits. With that, we're mostly asking what age groups they're bringing, how many people they want to bring, and we ask for some days and times. But then we start a conversation based on that, and we frequently ask them, what is it that you hope to do while you're here? We start with, we can do a tour, we can do a simple project, but if you're a scout group, is there a badge you're working on that we can help with? And then we try to also make sure that they have reasonable expectations based on the time they want to spend in this space. So that's part of the conversation we have as well. This is what we think that you can reasonably do within the time you have allotted. We also look at how many people they're bringing in. If you're bringing in that many people, maybe we should do it in 2 groups if you hope to get this much work done. So it's really making sure that we can meet their expectations based on the time that they have and the staffing available. And sometimes the answer is we can't do all of that in one visit. Would you like more than one visit, or would you like to maybe scale back what you plan to do while you're here? But I think it is very important to help frame those expectations before they walk through the door whenever possible, so that when they come in, they know what to expect and they can leave happy and not disappointed.
Thank you so much, Kara. That's really helpful. We have another question that came in wondering about how non-library makerspaces can be a resource. Oh, and also a compliment saying this has been really wonderful to hear how deep a dive that we've taken and expressing appreciation for that. So thank you for that. It's been really fun to be able to dedicate 18 months to this and do that deep dive and conversation with this incredible team and with the broader community. So it's been really exciting. Does anyone want to talk about non-library makerspaces as a resource? Such a great question.
One of the recommendations we made was like cross-sector collaboration. So I really appreciate this question. And I think the field can be richer and richer when we work across different maker spaces. Apparently, like community-based makerspace would be a great partner at the CU Community Fab Lab. We are actually a makerspace on campus. We are not associated with the libraries, although, we are part of the iSchool. But still, we work a lot with like public libraries, after school programs. So Emily, who is doing the community coordinators, can tell you more. But I think we should be open to work with just across different maker spaces.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about what we do.
Mhm.
So for us, a lot of it is making sure that we're not always duplicating efforts. And sometimes those of us who are in the community makerspaces have a bit more time to dive deeply into things, to learn about newer things that are up and coming, or we may have tools and resources that are not available to the library. And when we build a relationship with the libraries, we're basically able to make sure that we're able to each give according to our own abilities and strengths. So if one of us already has a tool that the other one might want to use for a program, we may not both be getting that same tool. We may instead be like, okay, how can we work together that we can either bring programs here or we bring the tool to them? As well as for schools and for libraries, we do things like curriculum co-development, where we say we can help find other experts who know how to do this really well to help create these programs with you because you know your community and what they will want best. And all of that will be limited by your capabilities as an organization. But really, that is one of the biggest things that I found is that librarians who are working in the field, again, they are doing so many things, they have very little time. Sometimes our ability as a community makerspace is to come in and help reduce that workload for them, not just providing training or like digital resources or a tool, but being a person for them to work with, be a sounding board with them to help them, especially if they are sometimes the only makerspace professional in their entire library. Um, that's some of the things that the community non-library makerspaces can do and be a resource for.
That's super helpful, Emily and Kyungwon. Thank you. I'm mindful of time, and so I want to make sure we have time to give you links to the website and all that good stuff. I just want to call out 2 things from the chat. One is talking about our findings as being a way to give language and to articulate what's going on in makerspaces, which is great. And then I see the Guild of Library Makers. Matt is sharing some resources there, which is amazing. There was also a question in the chat, or I'm sorry, in the Q&A about what resources are currently available so that we don't recreate things that are already out there. And so want to direct you to our website for that and hand it back to Dr. Koh at this point to kind of talk about how you can learn more going forward with the report and everything else that we've gathered. So thank you so much. I will hand it back.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the active discussions and questions here. It's really great to see lots of comments and questions. Yeah, I have a question about can you have access to those slides? Yeah, we'll process the slides and post it to the website. And again, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter available on the website because that's the way we're gonna communicate when the final report is available. Uh, yeah, another thing is we talk a lot about the like resources currently available. I want you to check out the library makers, and there are different initiatives and toolkits. It's wonderful to hear about the Guild of Library Makers. So hopefully we can continue keep in touch and coordinate our effort. Um, yeah, let's see. So that's pretty much all we have prepared. It was really great discussions. So yeah, we'll keep you posted. Can't wait to see the final report coming out. And thank you so much for being here with us today. Bye, everyone.